join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
The domino effect is in full swing, and the much-needed influx of new signings has now restarted following the official announcement of Dan Ndoye from Bologna. We're with the Statman and the Random Pundit to unlock and share opinions on all the latest Forest news. And if you've been here before, then welcome back. If it's your first time, then hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast, hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and my fellow Forest fanatic from across the Atlantic, Richard Spray.
Lead football from Forest through Yates, and it might break back for Yates to the edge of the box. Yes! Chris Wood, and Wood stamps it home. Opening day, Wood continues where he left off.
Hello and good evening, and I'm going live from Poland, hence the different background and the slightly echoey mic and different surroundings and so on. But we have made it. Apologies for the slight delay. But it's been one of those days where I'm a tourist at the moment. So spent the day in Berlin, which is about an hour and 30 minutes from where I'm staying in Poland. So that was a great chance to go and experience that. But of course, didn't want to miss an episode of Talking Red. So we've raced back. And Richard, I know that we were talking about an hour and a half ago. I might have been on my phone doing it and all the rest of it. But we made it. We're here. How you doing, buddy? How you feeling?
I'm doing good. I managed to stay awake for that match against Birmingham City. Thank goodness. Others that we communicated with via chat seemed to get a nice nap during that. But outside of that, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I enjoyed what I saw. I'm sure we'll get into that, a little bit here. And excited to have Dan Ndoye in the building and playing with the squad today, and look forward to more signings in the future. So yeah, doing good.
Excellent stuff. Raf, the Random Pundit's with us as well. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing well. Yeah, it all seems to be kind of doing around. A lovely day trip down to Devon yesterday to go see a friend who had flown in from Hong Kong. So absolutely lovely. Back to the old smoke. So yeah, all good. And yeah, I missed the quite a lot of the friendly games, but apparently I haven't really missed very much. So that's fine. Yeah,
it's funny because I watched the friendly. I was in Berlin today, as I said. But I was in a German department store. We'd done Checkpoint Charlie. We'd done the museum. So all the stuff that I was really interested in doing, we did in the mornings. We got up really early. And then, of course, I was with my beautiful wife and with her fantastic auntie and cousin. So, of course, we ended up in a German department store because they wanted to do a little bit of shopping, which meant that I was a bit of a loose end. So I had it on my phone, literally, the whole match, stood in the ladies section and sat on a stool somewhere. So I did get to see it, but didn't really kind of cheer me up very much, to be honest with you. Dan Scape's been feeling a bit ill the last week or so, and that dreadful COVID still seems to be around. It's lingered, but hopefully you're feeling a little bit better, Daniel San.
Yeah, I think so. Although I think what Richard was alluding to in his little comment there is that I fell asleep for the last 10 minutes of the friendly game. So whilst you were making the effort in Berlin to watch, I was just snoozing. I'm still in pre-season mode myself, I think.
Well, we are going to get into the Birmingham game and the pre-season so far in just a moment or so. But if you are watching along, please do go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button if you would. We will try and give shout outs if we can. Hopefully the connection here will stay as good as it is at the moment. So you might get a few gremlins, so bear with me, guys. But the best place to start is that we've got another Dan. Dan! For all of you, yes, Dan Ndoye. I've got this amazing intro as well in my head already planned out, but I'm not really Richard able to kind of get myself together to give it the justice. So the Dan Ndoye intro, if I can't get it done in the next week or so whilst I'm over here in Poland still, it'll be when I'm back. But yeah, I've got all these ideas, but it was so good to have him announced, and yeah, kind of kickstart the recruitment process again, Richard, because of course we had the Botafogo boys come in, and it all stalled. And Dan Ndoye in the building. Sum up your thoughts on this one, Richard Spray.
Yeah, much needed area of the pitch, right? That we were desperately hoping for someone to fill that void, and we've got a player that I know, Dan Cook, beautifully, prophetically, wanted to see come in and wear the Garibaldi red, and he looks good in that shirt, doesn't he, on that image right now? And so, yeah, he's definitely. I mean, we'll talk about how he played in the match because it was shocking to see him be thrown in there so quickly, but there's a lot to like about him as a player. I think there's some maturity about him that you really like. He has a good personality. I mean, he seems to be already sort of integrating and starting to get, we've seen some images of him giving a hug to Ola Aina, who I'm sure everybody gets a hug from Ola Aina. I wouldn't mind a hug from Ola Aina. I'm sure that would make me feel better about life in general. But so anyway, I'm excited about the kind of potential he has. And Dan kind of has talked about his pace, his tidiness and his adeptness on the ball. And he scored some goals last scoring. I think he had 8 goals last season with 6 assists. So there's definitely a lot to like, definitely a lot to look forward to as he continues to progress and kind of like, get accustomed to playing with Nuno or under Nuno and with the boys on the pitch and in the squad right now. So yeah, I mean, it was we long thought that it wasn't going to happen, right? It seemed like Napoli had taken the lead, and thankfully, Mr. Marinakis, being who he is, decided to seemingly close this one out and keep Napoli at bay and get him over to the City ground. So very grateful for that.
Yeah, I mean, I was thrilled that it happened because it looked like we were in danger of being too distracted, Raf, with the Morgan Gibbs White episode. Mr. Marinakis, as we spoke about on our last episode, had swooped in and taken care of MGW. And it feels like he kind of went a step further and said, right, let's get this one over the line. I know that you've also been kind of in and out in terms of an eye on friendlies and an eye on stuff. But what did you make of the kind of way the club announced him? Because we were kind of thinking it was going to be a big announcement. And it was Danscape who put out on X, surely there's got to be some kind of link to the Steve Coogan sketch, which they did eventually do, to be fair. So Danscape's got a feather in his cap. But a lot of the fans were kind of feeling like a little bit deflated. But I've got to be honest with you, I don't really care. He seemed really kind of happy to be here. He loved the shirt. As soon as he said it was beautiful, that was it. I was sold. I was hooked. What are you thinking when it comes to Dan Ndoye? He's coming on quite a bit of money. Does that matter so much?
Well, a couple of things. With these kind of big kind of reveals that we get, I think it's nice to get the lights on at the ground and all that type of stuff. But I don't think that happens because I think this was all done abroad where the training camp was. I don't think it was the PR team's finest hour. I've told that I'm a dinosaur, and actually looking like it's 1960s in a cubicle in an office is actually cool these days. So it tells you what I know. But it did look like he was sitting in an IKEA chair rather than a throne and all these other bits and pieces. So, but I do think at the end of the day, it's more, if it's for the player, the player and their ego, if they don't mind, and if evidently he doesn't mind, then he's my type of chap. He's just here to play football and enjoys football. It doesn't really make a difference what the reveal is and how glamorous it is. I do like the comedic ones that some clubs are now doing, and they put a bit of actual cinematic element into it, which is kind of funny. And that's more for us as fans. I quite like that. But the price tag, I think he's a big game player. Like he's scored in the cup final to give them Bologna their first trophy in over 50 years. He's a goal scorer, which is what we need more than assists. We need someone to help out Wood. I'll come a bit onto that in structure-wise. And the price tag is not outrageous, and it's not like we've spent all the money that we got for Elanga on him either. So he's coming in, I don't think, with the full expectation going, we've literally spent every penny that we got for Elanga on you. You better be awesome. So hopefully, though, also, if you think about the price tags and the values of the players that he's going into the team with now, when we have a player come in that's 30 million quid, I think the situation's a bit different from when Sangare came in and you looked at the value of the players that are around him, of what now the players are actually worth, with your Andersons, your Morgan Gibbs Whites, all of those laced through the whole team. He's not going to feel the weight of the world on him. I hope he doesn't, because he's not like an outrageously expensive player compared to everyone else in the squad.
Yeah, I kind of think as well that inflation and the going rate is kind of the base rate for certain types of players has gone up as well. So it gets to the point where I think, let's just get this deal done. He comes with a good reputation, a different player in some ways to Elanga, and everyone talks about the pace. But, Elanga is almost a one-off in many ways, because his pace is his absolute top skill, part of his skill set. Dan Ndoye comes with good dribbling, good ball control. He probably should have scored today, in fact, and we'll get on to that in a moment. But Daniel San, your namesake is in the building, and you were calling for his name or this particular signing, so you must be feeling quite smug at the moment.
He was on the list, wasn't he? He was on the list, I think, mentioned on this podcast when we looked at a few options to replace Elanga, mentioned on another podcast. But I thought he was out of our reach. I thought other clubs would be ahead of us in the race to sign him. So he was never necessarily top of my list, just because I thought, well, he's probably going to go to one of the top sort of 4 or 5 in Germany or something like that. So it's a bit of a coup for us to get him. Obviously, we've had to pay. We paid the price to get the deal done, so that he's in with the time we need him to spend in pre-season. Unlike, say, Sangare, which was literally done on the day of the deadline, and it doesn't really help when you've got that big price tag if you've got a day to get ready for the season. So I liked what I saw of him today. I'm sure we're probably coming on to today's game a little bit in the next bit of the chat, but I liked what I saw of him. He obviously, he wasn't going all out. He wasn't going all out to get on the ball. He was kind of new to the team, you could tell that. But when he got the ball, he looked after it well in a way that I think shows where he's different to Elanga. Not just going to take a touch and bomb past someone. He'll be a little bit more patient when he needs to be, more in the vein of a Hudson-Odoi. And he was, he looked strong in the challenges and things like that. So he kind of, obviously not much of a game today, but he did show what I think he'll bring, which is a little bit more composure, hopefully for us to build around.
So let's get into the Birmingham game then. He did get a start, which was good to see. Richard, I was quite pleased to see him go straight in, and why not? If you're going to get going, let's get going. If you're going to get minutes under your belt, let's try and get that synergy with the other players from the off. So it was a 70 minutes he played, and I thought he had some nice touches without, as Dan Scape says, going all out. But the team as a whole looked quite strong, albeit 4 centre-backs with Agyei at right back and Morata at left back, which I think really kind of magnified the area that we've got to perhaps concentrate on now. So where are you at then with the fullbacks? Ola Aina out again with a minor knock, we're told. Nico Williams on the bench but doesn't get any minutes at all. Okay, fine. So are you quite happy for us to start the season with Nico and Ola? Let's say they're going to start. We think they're going to start. I'm talking about fitness at the moment. If they're fit, they're definitely going to start. We know that. Let's say they're fit to play. Are you kind of pretty comfortable that we might be bringing fullbacks in later? Or are you kind of seeing the fullback area as a bit of a priority? And what did you make of Morata and Agyei in those fullback positions today? Because I got to be honest with you, I wasn't impressed.
Yeah, I thought Agyei actually played okay. I think there was one moment where he got turned by their left wing, and he looked a little raw. He looked a little like a player who hasn't played enough in the Premier League yet. And even though he's playing against a team that's obviously not a Premier League team, but I wasn't. There was moments with Morata. I thought, he has the ability to slot in a pass. I think he's the one who had the pass up to Jesus, who then backheeled it to Morgan for that, when Morgan probably should have shot, obviously, but he's the one who passed it over to Ndoye in that move. And that was really nice link-up play and really beautiful movement by the club. There was a few moments too early on where there was some 1-2 passing going on between Anderson and Morata. Morata is just one of those guys that I think what infuriates us is there's just a lack of consistency in his performance level. And then he'll have those moments where he sort of switches off, as he did on the goal. Didn't really defend that very well. Milenkovic kind of got in the way of the I think it was Stansfield, and then couldn't I think it was Sells couldn't see the ball when it was going in. So, but as a whole, I didn't see that Jair played that badly. I thought he also tried to make some advancing runs up on the right for a guy his size. You know, he moves pretty well, as we've talked about, but no one was really picking him out. No one was seeing him making those advanced runs. But I thought he actually played better than Morato in my mind. Maybe I'm looking at something different compared to others, but I thought I didn't see him make any glaring errors. Whereas with Morato, I just felt like he was a little bit careless at times. But you know, we'll see how he kind of fits in. And as far as Ndoye goes, you know, I think it's remarkable that he played pretty decent considering he's had limited time on the training pitch with the team. He's been able to, clearly Nuno must have shown some trust in what he's already seen from him. So it'll be good for him to have a little bit more time training. So we'll see how that translates when he gets to the next match. But yeah, as a fullback pairing, yeah, I'm really skittish about what we have right now. I love the two that are starting, and I think they're fantastic. But in terms of lack of depth, and I know Dan's been calling for that as well during the offseason, and in terms of getting those guys in. And I think you may run into an emergency situation where you do have, not the preferred left-footed left back, right, Dan, in terms of Richards playing. And then if we can get like a Maffeo over the line or somebody else to at least be able to fill somewhat of the depth chart to provide some coverage, even if it's just one before we get to the first match against Brentford, I'd be pleased because we're really lacking there right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, I see Omar Richards in the building still and on the bench, and you know, there's got to be a good player there, or a player of some kind. He played for Bayern Munich. I mean, is this broken leg and him coming to Forest just completely ruined his career, so that he is just not even considered as a fullback option? Because last season, Raf, we had Toffolo, who I thought was our Mr. Steady. He wasn't ever going to be a world beater. He had his moment against Spurs, and he could keep the shit together. Moreno, obviously, on loan. So I just don't understand why we're starting with Morato at left back. So I just thought he wasn't very good today at all. He kept giving the ball away. Yeah, you're right, Richard. I thought Cunha was the better of the two, but he's not a fullback. So I was a bit confused, and it kind of makes me feel, what is Nuno trying to achieve there, or is it just he's just filling holes with what he sees to be first team players? I want to give them minutes. I don't really care. They're playing right or left back. They're not going to be playing there in this season. I'm going to sort that. Are you worried, Raf, about the friendlies as well? I mean, this whole friendlies thing. There's people on X losing their shit at the moment.
Having a meltdown. People sack Nuno. Blah blah blah. It's just the whole thing. Just everyone needs to chill out, right? These are friendly games. Like the whole point is they're trying to get their fitness back up to where it should be. Now, this is the closest you could go to losing your mind slightly in the fact that actually for once we had what looked like a first team being put out. But to your point, we didn't have any fullbacks, right? That was the bit that was missing from what was basically a full 11 team. On the fullbacks, it's no alarm bells here. Nico's coming back from injury. Ola's got a knock. Moriera's supposedly got a bit of a knock as well. So other than that, we don't really have fullbacks. Your point on Richards of why was he not tried out, I don't know. But also it might be Nuno just making a point. Can we please have these players? Am I concerned? Everyone knows it. Percy saying we need fullbacks, right? They're on the shopping list. And actually the club has been very busy doing a whole lot of stuff that is more important, like keeping Morgan Gibbs-White at the club, getting Dan Ndoye through the door, getting contracts locked down so players don't go, doing all the things to try and get Callum Hudson-Odoi to sign a contract, I would say. Now they can actually focus, and I expect in the next week we will see a huge acceleration in the gap filling that's then going to be had. Because also we're talking about bench players as well. So we're not now necessarily competing with the Napolis of the world or everything else as well for these players that we've got to then fill the bench. So I think they'll come in. It's absolutely fine. Everyone should just keep calm and just let the recruitment team do what they need to do. And this is Nuno managing to make sure the fact that come the first game of the season, Ola and Nico are fit and ready to go, and we're not challenging them and pushing them back too soon and causing another injury down the line. So I'd rather have them able to start and 90% sharp than having a knock and then them trying to get them to 100% and not starting. And also given the fact our first 6 games, they're not, again, I don't want to tempt fate here and I'm touching wood, they're not the most challenging of all the games that we're going to be having coming up this season. So they can be used. A 90% fit Ola is still pretty much better than most fullbacks in the league. Same with
I agree completely. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm not worried. It was a friendly match, and it was designed to memorialise Trevor Francis, who has gone down in Birmingham's history probably as their best player. They describe, and a lovely statue of him was unveiled before the match, and the crowd was full. The crowd was buoyant, and this felt like a proper chance, Danscape, for Forest to kind of get their pre-season marker down. And whilst the comments are talking about minutes and legs and fitness, and it's all over X, and I believe that as well. At what point do they have to ramp up? Or is it a case of some players just won't get fully ramped up until the season starts? I mean, Murillo seems to have a shocker every pre-season. He's having another shocker. Even Milenkovic, had a moment today. Gibbs White's getting pelters. He signs a new contract. I mean, I'm not saying this, but the masses are saying, we should have sold him for 60 million. We're never going to get that again. There's unrest. The natives are getting restless, Danscape, and you fell asleep as well. So how are you feeling overall?
Yeah, I'm not worried by the result. I'm not really worried by the performance. I start to worry about the squad depth. Not worry as in it can't be fixed, but I start to think, well, look, this isn't what we planned, is it? Like, we didn't plan to probably get this far and not have fullbacks available to us that can seriously be backups on the right and left. So it feels like we do need to step that up somehow to get some deals done, but we also don't want to just bring in people for the sake of it. So I'm always torn between, do we, wait for the right target, or do we need to get the bodies in early enough so that they can settle down? It's trying to find that balance, and only the club know how close they are to bringing these players in that we need to see in pre-season. I'm less worried about pre-season performances for players that we already know what level they're at. It's not like Morgan Gibbs-White is suddenly going to be completely different this season than he was last season. Pre-season games aren't important for that side of it. It's just not the same headspace for the players. We'll have all said on here through the season that, if you're not at 100% in the Premier League, you'll get found out. And the whole point is that in a pre-season game, you're just not at 100%. They're operating at like 70, 80%. They're trying things. The opposition analysis isn't there. So, you don't understand the other players and what they do because they don't spend time analysing Birmingham in the same way you're going to analyse Brentford for day one. So none of it's the same. It's just a case of a little bit of understanding between players on the pitch, especially the new players, where do they like to be and how do they like to operate on the pitch? And then, mainly just that bit of fitness intensity side of it, but not so much the mental side of the game. And that's what the difference is. That's why you'll see Murillo smashing passes to the opposition, like pretty much every pass he tried, and Morato just switching off, and Milenkovic, got beat for the goal a bit easy and stuff like that. So it's just not the same. It's obviously nice to win. The mentality would be nice to go into the season with a win. So hopefully the last game is the one where we do everything properly and we actually analyse the opposition. We practice all that and we practice our game plan, and that's where we'll see if we're ready for Brentford, I think.
And that was Birmingham. That was their last game. They're starting their season on Friday.
They start on Friday. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Dr. Anna is with us. She says, "Hi guys, just logged in to say hello." She's away in Newcastle for the weekend and has had way too much drink. purely medicinal, Doctor, I assume. I'm on a gin and tonic, so I'm joining you on that tonight. Cheers to you. In amongst all of that, Richard, though, with pre-season, I mean, Danscape and Raf and you, and hopefully me a little bit as well, I think we're talking sense on the friendlies, right? But in amongst all of that, it would be nice to score more than one goal, wouldn't it? Is that making you a little bit nervous? Because, goals from open play is something we talked about last season, or is it just the same answer? Look, we're in pre-season. They're trying things out. There was the lovely back heel that you talked about earlier from Jesus, who I'm really liking the look of. And Ndoye literally has been in the building 2 minutes. So, if it crashed that in, we would all be now in Fantasyland. We would be making Dan Ndoye out to be the second coming ahead of Igor Jesus, because if it scored that. So it's all about just don't get too high, don't get too low. But for you, are the goals that aren't being scored. Is that a bit of a concern or not?
I don't think so. I mean, the minutes that are being managed, as you've pointed out, and everyone keeps pointing out, it's about how you sort of transition to getting fitness levels at a certain point, point, and tinkering, I think, to a degree, and sort of modifying your game plan to see what works and what kind of combinations of personnel you can get. And, some of it may be out of necessity. I think Dan's pointed that out before about, limitations in terms of availability. So then do you just sort of play a certain box midfield or other formations because that's what you have to do, or you play 4 center backs across the back line? I mean, it's just part and parcel, I think, of what preseason does. I mean, you're just trying to see what other ways you can sort of establish some sort of continuity in different personnel combinations, like I mentioned. So I'm not stressed about it. I think Chris Wood's still Chris Wood. I think he's, yes, there's a bit of a concern about, you want goal scoring, like I think Raph brought up with regards to Dan Ndoye, and he certainly has the adeptness to do that, or did so in the Serie A, and hopefully can do that in the Premier League. But in terms of who's going to feed him, you hope you start to see a little bit more from Callum. You sort of settle on who your set piece taker is going to be, so that they can start to fill that void that Elanga's left in regards to that. So, yeah, I'm fine. I think I had my little freak out, and you talked me off the ledge, Greg. You gave me a little therapy session through WhatsApp to try to get past the whole worry about how the recruiting's going, and just trust in the Nuno factor. Before it was like, hey, trust the process related to the recruiting, trust Nuno in terms of putting the right squad on the field, and them to be ready for Brentford, because they're certainly a team that we can beat, and I think we'll be prepared for them when that time comes.
So the big thing we're going to talk about in a moment is that recruitment drive, and I touched on it in the opening that the Dan Ndoye signing hopefully has now triggered the restart of our influx of talent coming into the building, and there's plenty of names out that are being put out there, and we're going to talk about them after we take this very cheesy break.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
Our good friend, the Cheese Trader, Stu Freestone. All the details are in the bio. Please do see him for your cheesy goodness. All right, so James McAtee, an official bid went into Manchester City earlier in the week, which was in the region of £25 million. It was, as I say, rejected by Manchester City. Sky Sports News understands. Are Forest going to go back in with another bid, Raf, do you think? Should they go back in? We obviously want to have depth. We want to make sure that we are having more than one player for a position. And here's a name that we've spoken about on this podcast a lot. So James McAtee, is he someone that you want to see play for Forest this season?
I certainly wouldn't be sad, and I wouldn't be annoyed if he joined us at all. I think it's just got to be right for us, and that's why we're being a bit cautious. It looks like Man City hold him in the same regard as Cole Palmer when it comes to valuation and going down. That seems to be the benchmark. What's very telling is no one suddenly jumped on that and met the asking price and gone with it. So, but Dan himself, you've made a very good comment to go, well, actually, it doesn't make a difference if he's in the last year of his contract. It's Man City. They can just offer him a new contract and then just extend it, and it doesn't really make a difference. So I think he will go, and I think it will be later in the window. I'd be happy him coming because, to be fair, he can play as an 8, he can play as a 10, he can play as a right winger. So he offers lots of flexibility. The fact Ndoye can play on the left and actually played just as much on the left as on the right for Bologna last season as well, shows the fact that we've then now got 2 players that can play on there. If Traore comes in and we get McAtee, that's actually 2 players that can also play on the right, as well as Ndoye, as well as Callum Hudson-Odoi as well. So that then starts giving us our wing balance that's absolutely everywhere, plus some actual cover for Morgan Gibbs-White, which we didn't really have last season, other than I still think Jota is that. So yeah, I'd quite like it. But then you suddenly go, well, could we actually have Fernandes instead? Is that an option that we can have? And can we have both of them or just one of them? David Luiz, I keep saying David Luiz. Yeah. I'm calling him Luiz. Just have done with it, right? Douglas Luiz. Yeah, exactly. Douglas Luiz. So Douglas Luiz, if he comes in, is that a just we get one of them or not? But when it comes down to it, a Ramsey, could he be coming in as well? And it seems those four names seem to be the ones that are being kind of bounded around the most. I would say that Douglas Luiz, probably out of all four of them, maybe not Ramsey, but yeah, probably all four of them, he's the most excellent right now for our campaign in Europe. He's the most ready, with the most experience, and has the highest ability right here, right now for this season. And actually, that's good, and that's what we want. And if we get a loan option for him, because there's this question about his tantrums, which is all alleged tantrums and all these other bits and pieces, we can make sure the fact that's all okay. But also, if we don't make Europe again next season, will Douglas Luiz want to stay with us? And then will we have another set of tantrums because then he wants to leave and go somewhere else that's in Europe? I don't know. That's why I'm a bit cautious about Douglas Luiz. And actually a McAtee or a Fernandes or a Ramsey, and actually Ramsey's my top choice out of all four of them. He's the one I really want the most because he has the most flexibility. He's probably the closest to Premier League starting ready other than Douglas Luiz out of the rest of them. But that's my kind of scattergun approach. So I went a bit wider than just a McAtee question there.
No, that's fine because that's perfectly fine, mate. Because all of those names are on the list that we want to talk about, and you've summed up your thoughts on them really, really nicely. And I've got to be honest with you, I didn't watch Fernandes at Southampton last season. I know that Dan, Scape, and Richard, you two have been quite keen on him. I've got to be honest with you, I don't know much about him. I didn't watch Southampton get relegated. I watched Forest get into Europe more than anything. So, what kind of player, Dan Scape, is Fernandes? Because you're quite hot on this guy.
Yeah, I didn't watch loads of him. I'm not saying I would have watched him week in, week out, and to see all of his game. But for me, when we did see him, when we saw him at the City ground in particular as well, and when you do see where he impacts the game, he's very mature for a 21-year-old. That's what appeals to me. He just looks like he's ready made to go to another level as a player. You can sometimes see that in a short spell with these players. So McAtee, I suppose on the opposite end, McAtee is clearly a very natural footballer. He can do anything with that football, but you're not sure on his mentality necessarily in the game as much. That focus and that kind of sort of extreme desire to improve and do exactly what's needed all the time is the bit that you would question with someone like him coming to Forest. Whereas with Fernandes, I think he's shown that. I think when you watch him play, even for like Portugal under 21s and things like that, he's the kind of player who just plays at 100 miles an hour. And I think that's what you want from a young player, especially in central midfield. So I just think he's one of those players, if you bring him in, you will not be disappointed in the longer, medium to longer term. You just will not be disappointed. And it's less of a gamble for me because I just think he's got that maturity for someone of his age. In terms of what type of player is, I don't think you're comparing him and Douglas Luiz myself. Maybe a little bit, but I think Fernandes is a little bit more of an advanced player. I don't know whether Richard, you popping the slide on for that one now, or we're talking about that in a bit. But I suppose just in terms of profile, it's I'm describing what's on these charts probably ahead of time. But
well, you know what? Whilst we're there, whilst you're kind of getting into it, we haven't done it for a while, but we do have the Statman with us after all.
I'm a Statman.
Fazendo som, Pedrinha Moraes fazendo som, e Pedrinha Moraes fazendo som.
Willy Bolly still there.
Oh, still there. Go. Still in there.
Big Willy's still there. Go on then. So you got the charts for those that can see. Mateus Fernandes and Douglas Luiz with some nice graphs there for us from Dan Scape.
Yeah. So they're not directly comparable players. I don't think the club would be choosing between these two players in terms of who they sign. They might be choosing between, say, Fernandes, Ramsey, and McAtee as a group of players. But I think Douglas Luiz is a player that sits behind the play. He sits deep, and he is that conductor role that tends to be at the back of your midfield and controlling things, as opposed to Fernandes, who is more of a box-to-box player. He's going to play in front of the midfield generally, and he can play in the 10. You know, that's where his versatility would come in, is that he would be a backup to Gibbs-White, and he would also be a backup to Elliot Anderson as the box-to-box player, as opposed to, say, competing with Sangare, which is where I think Douglas Luiz ends up kind of competing with for that deeper role, albeit in a slightly different way. So the charts on the screen, I suppose the bottom charts are the bit that's probably easiest to see on here, and these are the old radar charts where you want to be filling the chart in as many areas as you can, albeit what these are skill sets, and no player really can cover everything, because, you know, if you're good at one thing, you tend to not be able to do another. And these aren't always about being good at something. These are showing what someone's doing the most when they play. You know, a lot of it is what they do when they're on the pitch, which gives you an idea of the style of player they are. But you can see Fernandes on the left is very much a playmaker. He's good at ball carrying, and he's very good at chance creation and getting box to box, which is the kind of left-hand side of the chart there. Whereas Douglas Luiz, to be honest, his chart isn't brilliant. He's not hitting those green zones for much. You know, if you look at it on a pure numbers basis, he's into the top 40%, but he's not pushing the top 20% of players for a lot of these stats. So I suppose part of my reservation personally on Douglas Luiz is that I think there's a little bit more eye test versus numbers. And I suppose I've spent all summer coming up with these numbers and trying to work out how to do all these. So I'm going to decide to trust the numbers, even if I'm wrong for now, because otherwise there's no point sort of having them. But I think he's one of those players where it'd be really interesting to see if he does come in, like what he brings that the numbers don't show, because compared to some of these other players, he doesn't hit those like elite levels for the chance creation and the playmaking and the ball carrying and things. Yet the perception of him is that he's a really top midfielder. Now, what he is good at is scoring penalties. He's good at assisting from set pieces, and he's good at scoring long range goals. And I think in his last season at Villa, he exceeded, he doubled his XG basically. I think his XG was 3 and he got 6 goals. So, it's a case of, can he sustain that? As obviously is the normal trend with XG, is it trends down, and you can't do that in the longer term. But that's I suppose a bit of a summary. I think they're different players. We're not comparing like for like with those two. Rafa, you want to come in?
Yeah, quick question. First thing is I'm pretty sure that Douglas Luiz is a set piece maestro. Like when he was at Villa, he was taking everything. So I'm not quite sure why he's a 57%. He'd be like
that's the impact. So that's the impact that he's had. So it's basically that stat is saying if he takes 10 free kicks or corners in a game, how many times in a game does a dead ball lead to a chance for somebody? So
got it. Okay.
So that ranking then is a ranking against all the other players in his position in the Premier League. So he ranks in the 57th percentile, as you call it, for the impact his set pieces have, whereas Matheus Fernandes has a higher impact.
Interesting.
And
Cool.
James Ward-Prowse being the ultimate set piece guy, he's at 95% on that score, if you like.
Okay.
Well, yes, he takes a lot of them, but it's
about how effective they are.
Yeah, because
let's face it.
Get a lot.
Let's face it. We need someone who can take control of set pieces, because at the moment it's not good. Today wasn't good, and I think that's got to be something that's sorted out. Someone standing over that ball on corners and free kicks in and around the opposition box has got to be a lot better. Richard, where are you on Douglas Luiz? Because I'll be honest with you, I'm all for it. He's 27 years old. He has got great Premier League experience. I personally don't read too much into the whole Juventus thing. Sometimes players go abroad and they just don't settle. And who knows what goes on behind closed doors, whether he's had a tantrum or not. Sometimes you only hear one side of the story. I'd be prepared to give him a chance. We are very good at rebuilding players. The arm around the shoulder treatment. Let's, in my eyes, in my opinion, get him in. I think him coming in would not only give really good competition, but I'd have him as a starter. And then that also leads into the Sangare question, who everyone is sucking his dick at the moment, because he's the standout player. everyone's all over Sangare, and I'm here for it because I think he absolutely has stood out in pre-season, but it hasn't been that difficult. So, I know that I've got pelters against Sangare, but I'll say it as I see. He's played well, but I kind of feel like I still want more from him. So where are you on Douglas Luiz coming in? And if he comes in, does he start? Or are you just thinking about a different player entirely, a Jacob Ramsey or a Fernandes?
A couple of things on that. So the first thing would be I've warmed to the idea. I think I was a little bit angsty about the idea of Douglas Luiz simply because of the cost. If it's a loan to potentially buy, he's on a prove it deal scenario. We've seen this play out, right, Raf, in the NFL. It sometimes can be a great value to have players in that situation because they're going to want to show that they are truly the Premier League quality that he's shown in the past. So I wouldn't be disappointed, similar to what Raf was saying about McAtee. I mean, it's a different profile player, different age, all of that. But I would say I'm comfortable with that idea because it's not a bad thing to have sort of a plug and play, ready-made player who does have European experience, like it or leave it, where they didn't get a lot of minutes at Juve and fell out of favor with them, or whatever the case may be, whatever's driving that, whether that be attitudinal, whether it be on the field play, whatever it is, he can come in. And I think if we're genuinely looking at him, we don't have any clarification on that for many journalists in the UK. But if we're really looking at him, then that tells me something about, well, could potentially Nuno feel comfortable with that? And that means a lot to me simply because he's so culture driven. He's so good at knowing the right guys to get in. And to your point, he's also good at sort of like embracing them, helping them sort of fit into that. So from that standpoint, I think it's good. He certainly has a skill set that we coveted, just like you mentioned. But what intrigues me about Matheus Fernandes, for example, is that, as Dan, I think, touched on a minute ago, it's not the usual situation, right? Similar to what happened with Tielemans when he went down with Leicester City. You've got a guy who's had experience and he's shown the capacity to play in the Premier League, even albeit it's sort of held against him that he was playing for a very poor side. Ultimately, he's a talent. He's a perfect age bracket for what we want. He might be a little bit more expensive in terms of the transfer fee. But in a couple years' time, as others have talked about, you could flip him for double what you're paying for him potentially. And those are the kinds of things that we continue to want to do. It'd be one thing if you're bringing him from the continent and he doesn't have any Premier League experience, but he's shown that he could be potentially an effective player. But with him, it's a bit of a different scenario. So if you told me I had to make a choice, I probably would go with Fernandes because I also think he covers two positions. You could also get versatility. Can you also allow in certain scenarios where Morgan drops more deeply and then you put Fernandes up in the 10? I mean, there's opportunities there, I think, in terms of what you can do tactically that are different with Luiz, but that doesn't diminish the fact that Luiz does fill a gap and he does provide, again, more ready-made sort of skill sets, which, no one's going to be upset about that. I just hope it's on a loan deal so that we know we get the best of him, and whether that means he moves on, fine. But I think that means that we might get a guy that is ready to rehabilitate and ready to show the Premier League he can be effective.
Well, look, if we believe reports, it's Nottingham Forest that he wants because Everton are showing interest. Clubs from other countries, I think it was Fenerbahce in Turkey, are showing interest. And if we believe the Italian reports, he's rejecting everything because he wants Nottingham Forest. Now, he's another Brazilian, and so that culture at the club is there in place with our set of Brazilians that we've got already. Nuno, of course, Portuguese, and so we'll have no issue at all communicating with Douglas Luiz. And I think that, you're right. It's going to come down to Nuno and whether or not he wants him. I think Douglas Luiz, from what I've read, has an excellent relationship with Eddie Gaspar, who sponsored his work permit, I think, or helped with his work permit, at least not sponsored, but certainly helped all that kind of side of things. So I see this one happening. I really, really do. So I hope the club do go for him. And when it comes to James McAtee, he's another young player who I would really, really like to see at the club. Whether that means that the Jacob Ramsey thing, who I think was possibly being put into the mix around the Gibbs White situation. Once that was firmed up that he's staying, I've got a feeling that the Jacob Ramsey link will die off. Could be wrong. Other players that's been mentioned, I mean, Musah has been mentioned as well. Yunus Musah, again, a player that I don't know anything about. So I don't even know what kind of player he is. Danscape, Raf, Richard. I mean, what can any of you say about this guy? Has anyone got anything to say on him? I mean, there's another stat from on the boards of that. That's your cue, Danscape.
Sorry, Greg.
I would call him a monster. He's a bit of a powerhouse, but he's not necessarily anyone that would suggest we're looking to play more of a possession-based game. He's not like a technical sort of maestro midfielder. You can see from his stats here, he's very good at dueling, so he's very good at winning the ball back and bashing people off the ball. And he's very direct, and he's very good at carrying the ball. So he literally will win the ball back, turn, and then just try and run into space with the ball. But he's potentially not got the end product, because if you look on these charts on the left, sort of chance creation is not high, playmaking is not high, finishing is very much not high. So he's not going to necessarily have the end product. He's going to be the guy that would maraud around the midfield, win you the ball back, try and carry you 10 yards up the pitch, and then hopefully give it to someone else to do the technical bit with, I think, from my limited information on him.
He's not a player that seems to really kind of grab too many people's attention. Maybe he's further down the list, and we'll have to see that one pans out. But in terms of outgoings, Matt Turner has now officially left Nottingham Forest. We all have read about the toing and froing with Leon, who didn't want him and pushed him out back to America. So, yeah, good luck to him. You know, he's a terrible goalkeeper, and he was terrible for Forest. But he was a lovely guy by all accounts, and I wish him well. Wish him and his family nothing but the best. But I'm not going to lie. I'm pleased that he's moved on, because we do need better than that. Another player that's moved on is Dale Taylor. Robbo is a genius in the comments earlier on talked about Dale Taylor. I haven't seen this myself, so I'm trusting this. Robbo is a genius. There it is, saying that Dale Taylor has joined Blackpool. That's 1 million plus extras. So that's another £1 million worth of profit. So there are players going out of the club. And I wonder, could we see anyone else leaving that we aren't quite expecting? So here's a question for all three of you. Is there a player that's first team that you think might go still? I'll put the names out there, perhaps. Callum Hudson-Odoi, because of the contract. Sangare, who, I want to hear your thoughts on Sangare and where you're at with him. Could it be that, you know, with Douglas Luiz coming in, perhaps that Sangare is allowed to leave? I'm not saying that I want that or I think that will happen. I'm just kind of asking the question. He's starting against Brentford, by the way, as it stands at the moment. Him and Anderson, as far as I can see. So is there any other player that I haven't maybe mentioned, Raf, who you kind of think, well, look, you know, it could be that we do lose another player, or is it shot time and we're only focusing on incomings?
So is this just the starting 11 or anyone?
I think so. Yeah, listen, anybody. I was kind of thinking of starters, and there's more than 11 starters, aren't there? There's probably 12 to 15 starters given on any given game that you might say were their first team player. Yeah. Maybe a Morato. Maybe he's going to be deemed surplus because, you know, maybe he isn't up to standard. He's getting game time, but maybe he'll go. Or maybe I'm just trying to kind of provoke a bit of a conversation about any other potential outgoings. There might not be. Yeah.
So I sincerely hope Callum stays. I think that getting Dan Ndoye in is massive, because it shows the threat that's on the other wing. That will then give him space out on his side, because there's now actual credibility. With Alanga drifting everywhere, it didn't pull and holding the right-hand side. It didn't pull attention over to the right-hand side of the pitch, which meant that Callum's numbers last season were not great. And that's because most of the time he was double marked. So having someone that actually is super threatening down the right-hand side, I think will help Callum out. He'll appreciate it. I think that with Morgan Gibbs-White signing a new contract, that's a massive thing. And Ola signed a new contract, and Nico signed a new contract, and Selza signed a new contract, and Nuno signed a new contract, right? So I think all of these things increase the chances that Callum does sign a new contract. But even if he doesn't, do we keep him for a season? I've been having a debate on X about this, and I think Paul Morley was also weighing into this as well, of the value of actually just keeping him for another season, the differential in league position and how much we might get for him. I did the calcs. If we sell him now, we've pretty much got to get 25 million plus for him to make it make sense with the Chelsea sell-ons and everything else like that. So if he does go, I think it'll only be for that realm of money. But I really don't think he will. I hope he doesn't. I don't think he will. Sangare, who knows? But I think that when you look at it, we have a serious problem in terms of quality. I'm going to say this in the nicest possible way, quality in midfield, right? That was the weakest part of our starting 11 last season. So if Douglas Luiz comes in, we need to keep Sangare to raise the bar of how good generally midfield is with the first substitute and the second substitute. Now, Dominguez, Yates, they all are very valuable for what they do. I'm not saying that they're rubbish in any way, shape or form. But would I, if we are looking to be top 8, do I see either of those being starters in our 11? Pelter's coming my way because they're massive lovers for both of those. But no, I don't. But I see them doing a particular job to come off the bench and shut stuff down or do a job and be super valuable to the whole team, right? Super valuable. Yeah. So for me, I don't think Sangare is going anywhere, and he's eventually coming online and showing us what he can do. And if we're doing a possession-based game and we need someone to be able to pass, he's looking like the most effective. Controversial again with Morgan and everyone else as well. He's probably the best passer of the ball with the ball on the deck to actually find that hole and thread balls through to actually make things happen and unlock a low block or something else like that.
I want to see that bit more sharpness from him. When players are running off him, I just want to see him release it a bit quicker sometimes. I kind of feel like he's getting a bit caught in the ball sometimes still.
Well, we'll see. Look, he's coming online. He, like himself, is in pre-season, like everyone else. So he is going to get sharper like everyone else. So I hope he doesn't go. I heard one rumour from somewhere. Was it Tom Colomesi? I hope I've said that correct. He insinuated that if a suitable offer came in for Sangare, we would listen to it.
Sangare played the longest minutes today, didn't he, as well? It was interesting that he was kept on for an extra sort of 20 minutes or whatever, wasn't he? Did he play to the end? I fell asleep.
Obviously.
He
did.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know. You fell asleep.
So that's interesting in itself, whether that's because of his fitness or whether that's because we're trying to, put him in the shop window. Or
shop window. I don't know.
You just don't know, do you? Depends what else you've got. It depends what else you've got, what options you've got, doesn't it? If someone wants to come in and pay 20 million for him, and we've got another plan for someone that we think is definitely better for 30 million, then you do that. But if it's all very hard to say with players that are right on the fringe of the first team. There's a few players I think will leave, like Richards, Jota potentially, but
yeah, I mean, Jota's been mentioned, in dispatches that's basically going to happen. I think I was probably more leaning on, is there going to be a little bit of a surprise one, like a Callum or Sangare? What about you, Richard? I mean,
Morgan Gibbs-White, 2%.
No one's coming in for Morgan
Don't go there again.
No one's coming in for Morgan Gibbs-White. I'm interested. I will say it, but no one's going to come in for Morgan Gibbs-White. There's no one out there that will now come in for Morgan Gibbs-White, which is why it's 0.000%. No one's going to come in. The fucking Godfather has spoken.
Yeah.
The big fat Greek.
That's why he's dropping those stinking performances in pre-season as well.
He's switched off. No, but Sangare, I mean, again, if he was to be sold, I wouldn't be crying because I still haven't seen an amazing player. I've seen better, and I think there is better to come still. But I think if the money was right and we were bringing in Douglas Luiz and James McAtee and maybe even Fernandez and another one, I'd be like, okay, now we're talking. But I want to see that happen earlier. It's 2 weeks till the season kicks off, Richard. So if all these things are going to happen, it's got to happen quickly, right?
Yeah, and I just don't see it happening with Sangare simply because you don't have Dominguez he's not ready to play, and they don't exactly obviously play the same position. And I mean, but I do see there could be a potential if he has a good showing in the beginning of the season. If he is one that is starting the beginning of the season, which it seems like it is tracking towards that, sans what may or may not happen with Douglas Luiz or another player like Mateus Fernandez. But even again, they're not the same player like Dan mentioned. I could see him potentially going in the January window. Maybe that's a time where they might look to offload him if Dominguez comes back. And there just seems to be a preference for playing with Luiz starting, Sangare as a depth piece. Because Dan's more adept, I think, in understanding the full breadth of skill sets and how they're defined in the categories that they fall in clearly. But, Yates to me seems like he can do enough of a job to get the ball moving forward, to be that disruptor in the middle. Doesn't have the precision passing as Raf touched on, what Sangare does, but I think he's a very, very good backup. And we also know, obviously, what he means to the club holistically. But I would definitely think that it's possible in the January window. Morato seems interesting to me because I'm just curious in terms of the acceleration and development with Abbott and with Cunha. Because I seem to think that Abbott's going to end up being a squad player. And, he showed against Man City, he can play a little right back as well. I wouldn't want to have him there permanently, clearly, but I'd certainly fashion him to do that more than I would a Dominguez being slotted in there. But I definitely, yeah. So I think Abbott's the kind of guy, if those guys make that leap and they start to show that they're capable of playing, meaningful minutes, whether that be in cup ties, whether that be in European legs and so forth, then great, because I think Morato becomes sort of dispensable. And I think he has enough profile and he's shown enough, at least to a degree, even though there's moments that we see that there's lapses in judgment and decisiveness and playing switched on consistently. I think he can definitely be moved. And that may be another, that's a good point, as well as Ola Aina. So that there goes the need to definitely have fullback coverage. But yeah, I mean, the Morato, if you ranked him in order, I'd probably say Morato above Sangare for me right now. But again, it all depended on how Cunha and Abbott progress.
Yeah, AFCON is a concern. I mean, but that's still a few months away, but we have to think about that. So one thing that I wanted to kind of finish on was Nuno and team shape and this season and how you think things might come together. Obviously, you're just giving your opinion on what you've seen and the players we've got so far. But Igor Jesus started today, and John Percy alluded to it in his article that Nuno wants those 5 signings, but he also wants to develop a new style, a new way of playing. We talked about it on this channel, that the low block, low position of last season may still come into play this season coming up, but we can't rely on that because teams know how we do it and they're going to counter that. So I think Igor Jesus is going to be starting a lot more games than people thought. I think he's an excellent centre forward. I'm not saying I want him to start ahead of Chris Wood, because I think Chris Wood is our starting centre forward landscape. But where are you at on shape? And do you want to see it more evolving? And are you feeling confident that at the moment we perhaps don't have the players yet to do it, but the players that we are talking about coming in, are they the right kind of players to switch those formations?
I think I'm probably one of the least sort of on the side of we definitely need to change and we definitely need to go into like 4-3-3, or we definitely need to come up with something new. I think the issue we had at the end of last season was down to not having players to come in to what we were doing well, and when we needed them, because either Chris Wood was carrying a knock, or Ola Aina was carrying a knock, or Hudson-Odoi was carrying a knock. It wasn't, I understand what people say about teams found us out, but it still came down to moments for us, as to why we dropped points last season. It wasn't so much that we were getting hammered suddenly. It was a case of, a Chris Wood shot was just not going in anymore. Or, Morato was making a bit of a crap challenge against Leicester. It was still down to just moments as opposed to being completely undone. So for me, I would ideally have thought we try and sort of not double down on not having the ball, but double down on the formation, double down on the setup, and double down on the fact we're still going to be a transitioning side. Because I think to move to a possession-based side is easy to say, and it's actually quite easy to have possession if you really want it, but you don't have it in dangerous areas, do you? You have it in your own half. you don't make an impact. So it's kind of an easy thing to say, but I don't know what it really means to say that we want more possession. We don't just want more possession. What we want is more chances. We need to create more chances because we didn't create a lot last season. We were very, very clinical. That was the key, is that we could win a game 1-0 because we would only create enough chances to get one goal. So to create more chances, I think, comes down to the players more than anything. You at the end of the day, you have to rely on the players to make the right decision in that final third, to be confident on the ball, to take the extra touch where they need it, to set up the chance and not snatch the shots. And that's what matters when you get to Premier League level and you get to the pressure of the games. And yes, obviously tactics and structure and setup matters. But for me, I don't see us having this massive revolution. It will be an evolution of being a little bit better when we do have to have the ball, because we go behind and teams will give you the ball. So yes, we need to obviously work on that in training and work on it. But I don't think it'll be a wholesale change. I think if anything, we'll see the use of the back three more, because I think it gives us a different way of playing. And I was sort of a bit disappointed we didn't use that last season a few more times when we did have the issues with Callum and on the wings and Aina, because it gives you another way of getting width, doesn't it? It gives you like a different area where your threat comes in, because you're naturally wider. And when you've got Wood and Jesus, who's good in the air as well, like for me, if you're struggling to break teams down, then you just want width and you want to get the ball in the box. At the end of the day, you go a bit simpler, as opposed to saying, I just want more possession to have that stat at the end of the game almost. It's like, no, what you want is to play to your strengths, which with Chris Wood is get the ball in the box.
Well, last season, I don't have the stats to hand, but I think it's something like 35% of Chris Wood's goals were assisted by Anthony Elanga. He was the guy that was feeding him and has been feeding him even in the season before. So now we've lost Elanga, Raf. I mean, is that going to have an impact on Chris Wood? It probably will do, unless we can get that replicated in those wide areas with Dan Ndoye now. If Chris Wood's going to have a return similar or better to last season, he needs to be fed, doesn't he? As does Igor Jesus. So are you?
What was that stat?
Well, look, I don't have it to hand, but I know that again he scored 20
high
goals,
30% or something.
I think it's like kind of 30 to 35% or more.
All right, I'll play devil's advocate. That's 1/3. So you've got a right wing, you've got a 10, and you've got a left wing. So he was doing his fair share of providing assists for the striker, if I'm doing stats wise. So I don't think that number frightens me whatsoever. But all of everything that everyone's saying, my general consensus is that the midfield needs to do a lot more, and they need to carry the weight a lot more than what they've been doing. Callum Hudson-Odoi will naturally, I think, get better this season if he is still here, just because if the midfield get better and there's more threat coming up the middle and actually holding the right-hand channel, that will free up the left for him to be able to do what he needs to be able to do. We then have two players on each wing that are excellent at ball retention, right? Supposedly. If we get that level of excellent ball retention going through the middle of the park as well, everything will start coming alive. There is a chart that I've done that Rich has seen, which is actually a chat that originated with Dan and Pete Blackburn, and Robbo is a genius who was on here. And Dan, quite rightly, was getting plaudits, as was Pete, for what was calling the Ndoye transfer and what the prize would be, and lauded through that. And Robbo very quite rightly said, well, what if he's a duff? So then we were talking about a scale. And this is where I've come up with a scale that we'll do next episode, I think, talking to Rich on what's the expectation of output in terms of goals and assists together, which make you worthwhile, as it were, in your positions. But I've also looked at last season just gone. And without being a bit of a spoiler, midfield, rubbish. Everyone else was doing all right. So actually, the midfield really needs to raise it. And that's why, if we're talking about what we spend most of our time talking about today, was all these midfielders that might be coming in that are really going to raise our game. And I think that's where it comes from.
Lots of you watching, do us a favour, hit like and subscribe, won't you be darlings? We're on X, we're on Facebook, we're on all the usual places, and we would love it if you would give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. They have started to come in. We're getting some very nice comments made. I'm very grateful, Richard as well. We're going to finish, guys, because it's just gone 11 p.m. where I am here in Poland, which is fine. No problem at all. Yeah, for those of you that are wondering, I'm not in the loft. I'm upstairs in Auntie's house here in Poland, and delighted to be able to jump on and do a stream with these chaps. But Richard, I'm going to let you have the final word. We play Fiorentina on Tuesday in our next friendly. At home, under the lights at the City Ground, our first home friendly. Are you really hopeful, and how hopeful are you that they can start putting some of this kind of fear to bed a little bit? Grab a goal or two, get some, a bit more percentage out of these players, just ramp it up slightly. Is that what you're looking for?
I am, yeah, just a little different intensity. I mean, you saw elements of that today, and I think that Julian Bennett and Matt Davis-Adams were talking about that as well. And Bennett was talking about it, obviously, from a player's perspective, like when you start to see things. And, my history, of course, as you know, Greg, has been embedded in American sports. And, NFL teams, for example, are notorious because preseason could be just about as dull and about as difficult to watch as preseason, football in Europe and internationally. And they tend to hold back a little bit, right? So if you've got some tactical nous that you're trying to withhold, you've got some ideas that you're probably workshopping on the training pitch. You're not going to showcase that against, a Portuguese side and Chesterfield and, these other teams. So I could definitely see, and I think someone made a comment about that, and I think it may have been Nick Hemphill or another gentleman in the comments, but I can see that. And I could see also, just again, that acclamation from Dan Ndoye. And the one confidence that I have too is that Elliot Anderson is getting a lot of the ball in preseason, and there's a lot that's moving, and he's everywhere. Maybe not to the extent that maybe we see Morgan at certain intervals, or maybe even Callum in the first couple of games where he was kind of shifting around to different sides of the pitch. But I tend to believe, to Raf's point, there's going to be a difference in what he does this season. He scored 2 goals and had 6 assists last season. I think he had 2 or 3 assists off of set pieces. So if he's going to end up being the set piece guy, I think his acceleration will happen. But I do genuinely believe wholeheartedly in his ability to go to another level in his game. And I think if that kind of a collective thing happens between him, maybe Morgan getting back to more double-digit assists and so forth. To your point, Raf, I think you won't forget about Anthony Elanga, but you'll find a way to fill those gaps. And I think I'm just excited to see a little bit. Maybe they're, like Dan said, they're 70% right now. Maybe they move it to 80% effort, in the next match, because it's at home. It's against Fiorentina, which is a good side, as we know, because they played against Olympiacos a couple of seasons ago, right, in the Conference League. Certainly Nikola Milenkovic played for them. So I think you'll see a different level and a little bit more excitement from the squad. I don't think they're necessarily going through the motions per se and just not really giving any effort, but I don't think that they're showing everything. And I definitely don't think Nuno's showing everything. So I'm looking forward to that. It's always great to be back at the City Ground and have that energy too. That always boosts the boys to play even better. So
Indeed. Okay, let's leave it there. Dan, Skate, Raf, as ever, thank you very much to you two guys for your contributions. It's a couple of weeks to go until the season, so don't get too down in the dumps, Forest fans. There's still plenty of time. In Nuno we trust. Yes, in Nuno we trust. He did an amazing job for us last season, okay? The pre-season's still underway. Dan Ndoye's been in the building for 5 minutes. We could be seeing a Dharma Traore or James McAtee, or we could be seeing Douglas Luiz. There's probably going to be 1 or 2 names that we haven't heard of. You bet your bottom dollar there'll be 1 or 2 names that we haven't heard of yet that will be coming to the City Ground. So all is well. Stay together. Keep your chins up. All right. Get behind the team. That's the most important thing. We'll see you soon.
Come join Greg and Richard right here on Dark and Red.